The Times They Are Changing by Bob Dylan, Part 1. Bob Dylan Introduction. Bob Dylan was born in 1941, is a rock singer, stage performer, songwriter, film actor, painter, and music director who became the first song lyricist to win prestigious Nobel Prize for Literature in 2016 for having created new poetic expressions within the great American song tradition. The poet Bob Dylan is a versatile genius. Bob Dylan has a wide variety of professions like rock singer, stage performer, songwriter, film actor, painter, music director, and he became the first song lyricist to win the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2016 for creating a new poetic expression within the great American song tradition. Bob Dylan received or win Nobel Prize for Literature for creating new poetic expression in the American song tradition. He was born Robert Allen Zimmerman on May 24, 1941 in Duluth, Minnesota, to parents Abraham and Beatrice Zimmerman in a Jewish family. So Bob Dylan's actual name was Robert Allen Zimmerman. He was born on May 24 in 1941 in Duluth, Minnesota. His parents were Abraham and Beatrice Zimmerman. Bob Dylan was born in a Jewish family. During his days at University of Minnesota in Minneapolis, he began performing folk and country songs at local cafes, taking the name Bob Dylan, which became Bob Dylan in a short time, from the popular Western television series Gunsmoke, and not from Dylan Thomas, the popular Welsh poet. So, here the poet Bob Dylan take this name. His actual name was before Robert Allen Zimmerman, but during his education he educated from the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis. During those days, he began performing. Bob Dylan began performing folk and country songs at local cafes, taking or receiving the name Bob Dylan, which became Bob Dylan in a short time. He take that name from the popular Western television series Gunsmoke, and not from Dylan Thompson, the Welsh poet. His poetry was one that was initially influenced by Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Woody Guthrie. So Bob Dylan's poetry was initially influenced by Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Woody Guthrie. Dylan's was a professional career that began in 1960 as a rock singer of blues and folk tradition, hugely popular then. So at that time, folk tradition was hugely popular. He began his professional career in 1960 as a rock singer. The release of albums like The Freewheeling Bob Dylan, which was released in 1963, which included two of most memorable 1960s folk songs. The Freewheeling Bob Dylan's album includes two most memorable folk songs in 1960s. They are Blowing in the Wind and A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, and The Times They Are Changing, which was released in 1964. These albums. So these two folk songs in the album Freewheeling Bob Dylan made him hugely popular, not only in USA but throughout the rest of world. So these works or albums or the folk songs made him popular throughout the world, not only in USA but throughout the rest of world. Other notable works by him are Highway 61 Revisited 1965, which included seminal rock songs like a Rolling Stone, Planet Waves 1975, Blood on the Tracks and Desire 1976, which contained the song Hurricane and Time Out of Mind 1997, Modern Times 2006, Together Through Life 2009, Tempest 2011, 2012, and Shadows in the Night 2015. So these are some of his notable works. In addition to winning the Nobel, Dylan also won Grammy, Academy, Golden Globe Awards, and the prestigious Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2012. The scope of literature has been redefined during the contemporary period as the boundaries of genres such as poetry and song lyrics, fiction and non-fiction, and aesthetic and popular were erased. Literature, in other words, is the evolution of new forms and genres. So the scope of literature is redefined. Here, in addition, moreover or besides winning Nobel Prize, he also received or he also won many other awards like Grammy, Academy, Golden Globe Awards, and prestigious Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2012. The scope of literature is redefined. The boundaries between poetry and song lyrics, between fiction and non-fiction, between aesthetic and popular were erased. So the gap between these literary genres were erased. So literature, in other words, we can say it is the evolution of new forms and genres. Literature is evolving through new genres. Bob Dylan redefined poetry by making it more lyrical and contemporary as the Greek classical poets and the British romantic writers did. Through him, one's idea of literature has changed. Bob Dylan redefined poetry by making it more lyrical and contemporary. When we analyze the poems of Bob Dylan, we can understand that his poem is how much lyrical his poem is. And he is often compared to the great writers. Bob Dylan make his poetry more contemporary as Greek classical poets and British romantic writers did. He make his poetry more lyrical. Through him, one's idea of literature changed, and when often ignored and overlooked form of songs was given aesthetic respectability. Bob Dylan's lyrics are so literary that he is often compared to great poets like Shakespeare, Blake, Rimbaud, and Whitman. So, Bob Dylan's lyrics are so literary because he is often compared to great poets like Shakespeare, Blake, Rimbaud, and Whitman. The general theme of Dylan's poetry is what happens around us at present, rather than the eternal philosophical musings. Accordingly, he celebrated the rhythms of popular American countercultural movement. The general theme of Dylan's poetry is what happens around us at present, what happens in the society. That will be the general theme of Dylan's poetry. His songs are basically those of protest. So he employs in his poetry what happens around us at present rather than eternal philosophical thoughts. He also celebrated the rhythms of popular American countercultural movement. His songs were basically those of protest written for ordinary people, white and black, expressing dissent of racism, bourgeois ways of life, negation of civil rights to all, and warmongering. Here, warmongering means love for war, love for war, and negation of civil rights, bourgeois ways of life, that is, rich people's way of life. And so, his songs were written for ordinary people, especially downtrodden people, that is white and black, expressing dissent of racism. So people from white and black feeling the dissent of racism or the violation of human rights, or they are troubled by the evil of racist movements, evil of racism. That's why here the poet Bob Dylan is uh, writing his songs of protest, especially for ordinary people. Bob Dylan uh, makes lyrics for ordinary people, white and black. So his poems express dissent of disagreement of racism, and his poems express bourgeois ways of life. His poems express negation of civil rights to all, and his poetry express love for war. In 2008, the Pulitzer Prize jury awarded him a special citation for his profound impact on popular music and American culture, marked by lyrical compositions of extraordinary poetic power. So, Pulitzer Prize jury awarded him special citation for his profound or his deep impact on popular music and American culture. For his impact on American culture, marked by his lyrical compositions of extraordinary poetic power. So, Bob Dylan has this extraordinary poetic power, that his composition of lyrics is that much extraordinary. Superb. The Times They Are Changing is a legendary song that came out in 1963. So the poem The Times They Are Changing has published in 1963. According to Dylan, this was definitely a song with a purpose. I wanted to write a big song, some kind of theme song, with short, concise verses that piled up on each other in a hypnotic way. Here he describes how he chooses words for his poem. The poem is a legendary song that was published in 1963. So, according to Dylan, this poem is a song with a purpose. So, he definitely composed these lyrics with a purpose. He wanted to write a big song, some kind of theme song, with short, concise verses that piled upon each other in an intelligent way, a hypnotic way. The civil rights movement and the folk music movement were pretty close and allied together at that time. So at that time there were movements, that is civil rights movement, folk music movement were uh, pretty close and allied together at that time. They were all protesting against the government. During the hippie movement or civil rights movement, Dylan gives a call to people to stand united against all forms of injustice, the crisis of poverty and discrimination, and the violation of human freedom. So during that time of hippie movement, civil rights movement, Dylan gives a call to people to stand united against all forms of injustice and crisis of poverty and discrimination and the violation of human freedom. At that time, people were faced with, or people were facing the evils in the society, evils such as injustice, poverty, discrimination, and violation of human rights or human freedom. So, in order to fight against this, uh, Dylan asked the people to stand united against the government to prevent this injustice or to eradicate the crisis of poverty and to uh, eradicate the crisis of poverty and to prevent the violation of human freedom and discrimination. Discrimination on the basis of race, color, and on the basis of religion, so etc. So, in order to prevent or in order to stop this evils that was prevailing in their society, they were trying to protest against it. For the times they are changing, which is echoed throughout this whole song, is an optimistic assurance to those people who stand up for their freedom and for civil rights that though they constitute the minority now, but soon they will be the ones ruling and making change. In the poem, for the times they are changing, this title of the poem itself is being echoed throughout the song. Throughout this whole song, we can see the title of the song. Title of this poem, for the times they are changing, is repeatedly echoing in the whole poem. It is giving, so the echo of this for title uh, for the times they are changing is an optimistic assurance to the people who stand up for their freedom and for civil rights that though they constitute the minority now, but soon they will be the ruling and making change. So we can say that for the times they are changing is a refrain in the poem. That is, it is repeating throughout the whole poem. That refrain itself is giving an optimistic assurance to the people who are standing for their freedom and for their rights. Though the people are minority now, soon they will become the rulers, and the people can make change. The minority people may become the rulers of the country, and they can make change in the society. They can make positive changes in the society. In short, it is an anthem for the oppressed, downtrodden young people and a warning to the oppressors and abusers that they will be victims of their own actions. So, in short, what is the poem? This is an anthem for the oppressed, downtrodden young people. So this is an anthem for the black and white ordinary people. And this poem is also a warning to the oppressors and abusers that they will be victims of their own actions if they are uh, misbehaving, or their actions are not wrong. If the rulers of that country is wrong, their actions will uh, make them victims. So the poem is a warning to the abusers that they will become the victims of their own actions, that the people are going to protest or fight against the against the autocratic government.